Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 8 of my 2020 reads. This week I read quite a few short things. First, I finished Check Please Volume 1 by Ngozi Ukazu. This is an adult graphic work that is about a very sweet, cute guy starting in college on a hockey team. He's from down south and he's super sweet and he loves to bake. So it's all about him adapting to being at this new school up north, I think in like Massachusetts, and being on a hockey team, forming kind of a bond with his teammates, and maybe falling in love with one of them. There's a lot of sweet things about this story, and I'd heard about it from many different people who just really loved the sweetness of the story. I liked the art style, and I liked the main character's sweetness and everything. But I will say that this comic, while very cute in a lot of ways, has a lot of things that aren't so much my taste. So, for example, the teammates that the main character is learning to get along with and become friends with, they're the bro type. They're very, crude and just a little out there. And I think part of the story is about them forming that, bond of teammates, even though they're kind of bros, and about, even though they are a little bit rough around the edges, they still value that relationship of their teammates. Even so, I just didn't really like those characters, and it was not fun totally reading about them. The love interest also is very moody, very brooding, and it's just not so much my style. So I thought this was cute, but there's some things that I didn't love about it, and it's just not my favorite, but I did still think it was pretty good. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And since there's just one other volume that's coming out this year, I think I'll probably get that from my library as well, just to finish the whole thing. Next, I finished Sunny by Jason Reynolds, which is the 3rd book in the Track series. I am loving the Track series. I love Jason Reynolds' writing, and I love the premise of this series. So this series is a middle grade contemporary about 4 kids who are probably in like 6th or 7th grade who join a track team in their community. And it's all about them kind of working through the issues that they have and finding strength in their teammates. So I guess there's a little bit of similarity with Check Please. But in this story, I really liked the perspective. So this story is told from the perspective of Sunny, and Sunny is somebody who we have learned a little bit about in previous books in the series, but I didn't fully realize. I think that he must be neuroatypical, and the story is told from his perspective with such different language. It's really immersive and really kind of poetic and beautiful, which of course Jason Reynolds, being a poet, does beautifully. Where Sunny sees things often in terms of sound. He really loves sound. He loves the sound of words. He loves the sound of movement. And he's very creative in the way that he sees things. He also is homeschooled by a very quirky person, and sort of the way that they interact with the world is really fascinating. The other part of the story, beyond just, him interacting with the world in a different way that's really strong, is his relationship with his father. His mother died giving birth to him, and his father is still grieving. Their relationship is very strained in a lot of ways, and they've not connected, and there's a lot of guilt on everybody's sides. So it's just such an interesting exploration of the way that grief can affect us, and the way that grief can be something that we could sink into and not necessarily form the connections that we should with other people, and how to build connections when you've had a lifetime of not. And it's just really fascinating seeing all of this from Sunny's perspective, which is just a little bit different. So I really liked the themes in this. I love Sunny as a character. I loved that he has such a love of sound. It was really well done in the story, the way that he he saw sounds and felt sounds, and how everything meant sounds to him. And I just really enjoyed this short little novella. It was such a joy to read, and I can't wait to read the last book in the series. So as soon as that comes in my library, I'm definitely picking that up as well. I gave Sunny 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Strange Planet by Nathan W. Pyle. This is a very short little comic book collection. I believe that this is a webcomic that was then, put into this collection. And I got this as a gift from Sush, and it was a big surprise because I had never heard of this collection until maybe last month when Mariana at Mariana Quesada, who I will link below, talked about, this is one of her favorite books from 2019, and she said it was super cute, so I actually put a hold on it at my library, and then Sush surprised me with it as a gift. We give each other gifts every month for our month anniversary, and this was what he got me for this month, and I was so surprised because we'd never talked about this before, but apparently he's heard a lot of people talking about this online comic and thought that the humor would appeal to me, and it so did. It was also perfect because I had actually just DNF'd 2 other books this week that both had very, very heavy themes, and I was kind of in a funk. I needed something lighter to pick up, and so I picked this up, and it was just what I wanted. It's adorable. So basically it's just these aliens who are living life on Earth, and through their differing perspectives, it highlights a lot of the ridiculousness of daily life, and it's super cute and has a very gentle but sharp type of humor where it just recognizes how ridiculous we are as humans and how ridiculous the things around us are. And I don't know, it made me laugh out loud so many times, and I'm such a fan. So if you like kind of cute, sharp humor where you're looking at how ridiculous daily life is, I think this is an excellent collection. I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I listened to the BBC radio play adaptation of Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. This is something that I buddy read with Eva from Eva Strange, who I will link below, although she read, the German translation of the book, and I listened to the BBC adaptation. So this is an older, I think 60s sci-fi work that is a novella and looks at some scientists on a space station that is around this planet that has this ocean that seems sentient. And it's not really an ocean, it's something else, but it seems sentient. And it's a little bit of kind of like a thriller horror type of book as well, because there's something going on with the ocean and its ability to kind of communicate with them. So going into this, I had been interested, she'd been interested, but whenever you go into classic sci-fi, you should always approach with caution. And we definitely both had some issues with this. So although I did like some aspects of the story, there were some interesting things about the way that alien life might form and the way that it might try to communicate and how it might develop and these sorts of things, which are all themes that I find very interesting. Pretty much everything else in the book was problematic for me. Although I did think that the BBC radio play adaptation was a good radio play. So there's that. But mainly I had a lot of issues with the way that the story portrays women and just the perspective that it takes. I won't go into a full rant here because it kind of gives too much detail about the story, but basically a lot of this story kind of removes from women everything other than their devotion to men. And that is real problematic for me, and because that's a lot of what this story is about, I just kept having problems with it. Eva also noticed that there was a real potential in this story to kind of have some sort of at least irony or commentary about humanity and about the foibles of men, and none of that was done. There was so much potential in the premise of this story and what could have been done with it, and instead it was just this very kind of golden age hero deification of men story that did not work for either of us. So I'm sure she will wrap this up sometime soon, and you should definitely check out whatever she says because she's so funny. I love hearing what she has to say, and it was just great getting to have a conversation with her about the story, even though we both had issues with it. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars, and I think that at least half of those stars are because I listened to the radio play, and the play at least was interesting. So. And the last book that I finished this week was Brown Girl Dreaming by Jaqueline Woodson. This was a nice change. So this is a middle grade memoir, so it's nonfiction, told in verse about Jaqueline Woodson's growing up in the 60s with kind of her family split between the North and the South. So spending some time in the South with her grandparents and some time in Ohio growing up and in New York growing up. And I loved this book so much. I am definitely going to do a standalone review, and I'll post that later this week because this story was so beautiful. Not only just was Woodson's writing gorgeous, I absolutely loved it, but I just loved all the themes. It's done so well, speaking to a middle grade audience, but addressing so many really interesting, fascinating historical issues and themes, things like the civil rights movement and the Black Panthers and things like the Great Migration. Also things like just family dynamics, things like heritage and being torn between maybe where you're from but where you want to go, having issues with, you know, her being basically the middle child and kind of having strict kind of religious grandparents and a strict mother, and some of these things of like respectability politics, and so many amazing things are addressed in this. Also, what I found fascinating is that Jaqueline Woodson, based on this story, I think maybe is dyslexic. And so it was just really fascinating reading about her journey to becoming somebody who loves writing, who loves storytelling. And the book follows her basically from it talks a little bit about her birth and then the history of her family when she was a baby through maybe when she was in like 5th grade, something like that. And it's just a beautiful story about her childhood. I highly recommend this. I will do another video talking about just how great it is. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm just in love with it. So that wraps up week 8 for me. I really enjoyed a lot of these, some of them, maybe not so much, but it was a great reading week to get through so many different types of things that many of them spoke to me, so that worked out nicely. If you've read any of the books that I talked about, go ahead, leave me a comment down below, tell me what you thought, or if you've read anything else that's similar, or if you have any thoughts about like Golden Age sci-fi. I just love to hear any comments that you have, and I will check in with you next week.